What is one thing that you love about the CRO space?
Control more of your success and your failure through optimization and testing, as opposed to somebody else deciding they wanted to do something different one day and that impacted everybody. If you look at your competitors and start copying what they're doing, for all you know, you're copying their mistakes, you're copying their biggest flaws. Looking at competitors is good for inspiration, but even if you see something you like, we would still say that needs to be tested. You can never take something like that and just roll with that. We ran a recent test with a customer in terms of colors of badges and some wording. The test didn't really do anything. It didn't move the needle in terms of driving any improvements. The customer was kind of surprised. Whereas from our point of view, it wasn't based on research. It wasn't based on customers telling us they had any issue seeing badges or seeing the pricing. If we're not seeing in any of our customer insight that this is a problem, we typically wouldn't overly focus on it. It would be a low priority. Most businesses we speak to, 70% plus of their traffic comes from Google Shopping. That traffic lands on a PDP, looks at the product, they usually look at the key information, then they leave and go somewhere else and do the same thing on another website. If you're not tying in optimization, you're just welcoming that. You're just allowing that to happen. And so what you see is high bounce rates and pretty mediocre ROI.
If you were starting a career in CRO today, what is one thing that you would do differently?
Spend more time learning about statistics.
Welcome to another episode of the CRO Hour series by VWO Podcast. Get ready for some fun, insightful conversations about experimentation, user research, and the huge impact that CRO can have in your business. Before we speak to our guest, here's a very quick overview of who we are and what we do. VWO is a leading experience optimization platform that you can use to manage your experimentation program and deliver personalized experiences. One of our most popular offerings is VWO Insights, a platform to analyze user journeys and identify conversion roadblocks. Take a free trial with VWO today and optimize experiences across all your digital platforms. Now, let's jump right into this conversation.
Today we are joined by Garret Cunningham, the Director of Global Optimization at Columbus Global. He leads a dynamic team shaping strategies that drive client success. Before stepping into this role, he served as Chief Operations Officer at Endless Gain, which is now a part of Columbus Global, where he integrated their expertise into the broader Columbus ecosystem. Garrett's focus is on fostering innovation, managing a team of specialists, and ensuring that optimization efforts align with larger business goals for his clients. We're excited to hear more about his journey and the insight that he brings to this conversation. Hi, Garrett. Welcome to the CRO Hour.
Hi, nice to see you.
Good. How's the week going for you? How's the week been? It's a Friday.
Yeah, it's been good. It's half term in the UK, so all the kids are off schools at the minute. So I've had a couple of days holiday. So just using Friday to wrap up for the weekend.
Got it. Just curious, what is one thing that you love about the CRO space?
I think so. I guess there's one thing in particular that encouraged me to get into CRO. Previously, I was working in digital marketing, dealing with things like pay-per-click and search engine optimization. And what became more and more of a frustration over the years was how much your success really got dictated to by the big platforms like Google and Meta. And actually going into optimization, you get the chance to really control more of your success and your failure through optimization and testing. You're not being dictated to, and somebody else isn't moving things and pulling levers to kind of change the market from one day to the next, like it is in digital marketing. So I like that your results were really based on how well you did in your role optimizing, as opposed to somebody else deciding they wanted to do something different one day and that impacted everybody.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's more control for sure because the world of digital marketing is so tech dependent that it's changing, it's ever evolving, and probably optimization is one space where you can have a lot of control. Great. So let's get started. I mean, I have a bunch of questions to go through to better understand sort of your insights into this space, right? So the first one is, do you have a checklist? So what checklist do you usually go through before launching any test for your clients to make sure that you're getting accurate test results?
Yeah. So I guess there's probably two ways that I would break this up.
Mm,
One is starting with the platform. So, if we've not run any experimentation with the client before, we want to validate the platform. So things like AA tests, which just allow us to make sure that there's no sample rate mismatch, that we're seeing the same numbers of users coming through in control and variation. We should expect to see roughly similar numbers in terms of conversions and conversion rate. It's not unusual to see them be a little bit different, but roughly quite close. And then also use that time to check on other integrations and tracking. So, are we tracking sales and revenue accurately? And if we have any integrations with the likes of Google Analytics, are those pulling through and do the numbers look roughly similar to what we would expect? They'll never be exactly perfect again, but at least close is important. So that's kind of making sure the platform's right. After that, and then kind of if we're in a regular rhythm in terms of setting tests live, then for us, we've got quite a clear process that we follow, from design, build, and kind of QA being a big part of that. So with every test that we build, we've got quite a rigorous QA process. We have a whole separate team who do all of our QA work. And so they'll test every experiment that we build across multiple different devices, browsers, screen sizes, all to make sure that, everywhere that test is going to be seen, that it's working the way that it should. They also make sure that all of the tracking and everything is set up, and we're recording the goals that we should be recording as well. And we document all of that too. So we always have something to refer back to. Any issues go straight back to the developer to be fixed. And it's only when we're confident that two QAs have reviewed everything and signed it off that we're then in a position that we can share that with the client. And if they have a QA team in place that they can get to cross-check it as well, even better, we get that third sign-off too. So that QA process for us is very rigorous and really a key part of trying to minimize the amount of tests that we might have to stop because we see something once it's live. But that for us should cover all elements of what we need to do and what we expect the user to see.
got it, got it. And you work with a lot of e-commerce clients as well, right? I'm assuming now. One thing that we keep on hearing is consistent experimentation is very, very important to drive revenue and sales for e-commerce businesses. So, how do you believe testing velocity and testing volume can be improved for such businesses?
So the volume that customers can test that really comes down to resource, we believe, and dedicated resource at that. So having the right design and development resource on hand as part of that optimization team means that you manage your own workflows then, and as you want to test more, you just need to add more resource into that team. The amount that you can test or get done in a month is going to vary based on the size of each experiment, how many pages it might be covering. So, to get the most out of any team, we believe, it's about dedicated resource. So often we speak to retailers and clients who, they're pulling from other teams within their company. And, that means that how much time they get is dictated to by what else is happening in the business that's more important than optimization in their eyes. The vast majority of businesses have a huge development backlog, and so optimization kind of is fighting for a space on that backlog to get some tests run. So where we see the biggest successes from an in-house team is where they have those dedicated resources that are constantly running it. And we kind of hear a similar thing in terms of customers question, why work with an agency, why work in-house. And for us, it's where we kind of talk about one of the key benefits of being in an agency and working with an agency is, all of our team are specialists in what they do. It is purely what they're focused on. Our design team are all UX designers who are designing solutions to our customers' problems every single day. our developers are all front-end developers who are in the testing platforms building these experiences every day. It's all that they're doing. They're not part of a wider development team, which means that tomorrow they could be working on a different project. It's always optimization, and that's it. And that means that their skills are improving, the speed of actually making changes is improving, the amount of QA that's needed and the rejections from QA is reducing all the time because they're getting better. And we can flex and scale that as well for our customers. So if they want to run 25 tests in a month, we can allocate the resource to that customer to allow them to do that. And they might want to do that for 3 months of the year and then only run 1 or 2 tests per month for the other 9 months. We can help them with that. They don't have to worry about what that team's doing in between times because we have other work for them. So that's where we kind of think an agency helps with that even more than the main in-house team as well. But over all of that, volume of testing, we believe it is key to success. The more tests you can run, the more you learn, the more opportunities for generating revenue. And even within that, the more variations of each idea, the better. And that means more resources as well to put the designs and the development together as well. So, definitely think velocity is a big thing. How you get that in-house teams or work with an agency. Probably working with an agency gives you most flexibility, I believe, but I'm also probably a little bit biased with that as well.
Got it. Yeah. No, thanks for that. It's very interesting to get your perspective around testing velocity. We hear this a lot. Companies trying to improve that. The next question is around data. How important, because we keep on talking about data quality. So, do you think that having an analytics tool in place with proper data tracking really builds a solid foundation an effective CRO plan needs?
Yeah, absolutely. A proper data and analytics platform is I would say it's key. It's what's going to give you all of the insight into what's happening on the site, where your customers are coming from, going to, where they're dropping off, where they're spending most of their time. And that's really where you're going to get the bit of guidance in terms of where you need to focus your attention and really start to deep dive. I don't think it's the only thing that's important, but it's definitely a key starting point. If you have that in place, you can at least get moving on things to optimize. But we also say that a lot of the time it only tells you what's going on. We would also say, with that, you want to be looking at additional, more qualitative insights as well, like surveys, post-purchase surveys during the customer visit, and also user testing. It's a huge part of what we do for all of our clients is user testing. Speaking to their customers, getting them on site and being able to watch how they go through the process of buying. It's those things we believe tell you why. So if the analytics package tells you a lot of people drop off on this page, it's those other qualitative insights that start to tell you why they're dropping off. Give you a chance to ask, what are you looking for? And I'm not able to find things like that. So those really kind of guide you in probably the biggest amount of success as well.
Yeah. And you're talking about qualitative aspect of optimization, let's just say. Businesses who are really trying to start their CRO journeys, they're often confused between, behavioral analysis and competitor analysis, where to focus. What do you think? Do you think that there should be a split in focus between both competitor analysis as a part of optimization and behavioral analysis? Should it both happen at the same time? What is your opinion around both those aspects?
So when it comes to competitor analysis, we kind of go back to that sort of phrase. There's no such thing as best practice; it's common practice. And with that, if you look at your competitors and start copying what they're doing, for all you know, you're copying their mistakes, you're copying their biggest flaws. So
Yeah.
we it would never be a thing that we advocate doing on its own. Looking at competitors is good for inspiration and maybe seeing how other people handle some of the challenges that you might be facing. But even if you see something you like, we would still say that needs to be tested. You can never take something like that and just roll with that. So competitor analysis is something we were very cautious about. And we would say, it only forms a small part of what we do. And it should really only form a small part of the insight that you're gathering for your customers. We would say, you want multiple data points, the definitely the quantitative side of things, what's happening on site, heat maps, session recordings, understanding where users are clicking, where they're visiting on the site, and being able to watch how they browse through it, and then adding in those qualitative bits as well. We create a massive list of all of the issues that we see, and then we start to triangulate it. And actually, are these occurring in more than one place? That then really starts to tell you where you need to focus on what the big problems are.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you ask me to split it, I think I would go, 90% behavioral and maybe 10% competitor. Never the other way. And if anybody's putting too much emphasis on what the competitors are doing, you're getting distracted by other people's problems.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. Behavioral analysis just gives you so much of information around the why question of visitors dropping off through heat map session recordings. It's very hard to get the same thing in the competitor part of it.
Yeah,
which is more one-dimensional way of looking at it. The other part is matrices, right, or conversion matrices. Do you see conversion matrices especially for e-commerce businesses, as more like vanity matrices, and they should focus more on revenue matrices only? What do you think about it? Like, should the focus be at the end of the cycle, or should everything be tracked?
I think there's a balance that's needed. There are vanity. So I guess I wouldn't necessarily talk about vanity metrics as such, but definitely vanity goals more so. If somebody comes and they want to increase the conversion rate from X% to X%, then turn off some of your generic paid search activity. Start cutting out some of those traffic channels. Probably drop some of your Facebook and Instagram traffic, because that's where your low conversion rate starts to come in. So just increasing conversion rate, I think, is like a vanity goal, but using that as a measure of the success of individual experiments and changes that you make, that to me, that's not a vanity metric. That's a key goal in terms of what you want to make sure is improving, especially if that's your focus. If driving more sales is the focus of the change of the experiment, then it's fundamental to that. If it might not be, if your goal is somewhere else, is something else, and conversion rate isn't the sole focus, we would still say keep it as a guardrail metric, keep it as something that you still measure to make sure isn't having it isn't going in the wrong direction to a large extent. We kind of examples of that might be something like average order value. We did some testing with Flying Tiger, and we looked from the analysis and the research that we did. We saw that the price of delivery in different countries was really impacting conversion rate. So we looked at, if we reduce the price of delivery, what does that do to the conversion rate?
Yeah.
And we saw a huge increase in conversion rate. I think it was about a 94% increase in conversion rate. Now, the consequence of that is that people aren't putting as much into their basket to reach that delivery threshold as because they don't need to. That's how it was changed. So the average order value then starts to come down. So our original metric was conversion rate, but the guardrail metric has to be average order value and revenue, because we're definitely having an impact there. And in that scenario, we did see a drop off in average order value, as we expected, and that impacted the revenue figures. But because we had them in sight, we were able to then do the extra analysis and look at how did that impact profit, and how would that look over a long term, so that actually we can see does what's that elasticity of demand, and does reducing that cost to the customer increase sales enough to have an overall positive effect on the profit margin. And in that instance it did, and it was good. So just long story short, don't necessarily
Yeah.
agree that there are vanity metrics. I think
Mm.
the metrics that are important, but definitely guardrail metrics help back that up as well.
Right, right. And in terms of your tests as well, right? There's some we only talk about tests that declare winners or successful campaigns. But what about those tests that does not really declare a clear winner, or maybe a test that is not successful? What steps do you take next? How do you leverage whatever insights you have gotten from a maybe an unsuccessful test as a part of the overall campaign? What's your approach?
So we typically look at an iteration strategy.
Mm.
So if we run the experiment and we've not seen the outcome that we expected, then there's typically two ways you look at it. Was it a bad idea to begin with? Normally, we've got the data behind it that would sort of say, no, it's a genuine problem. So, customers are having an issue with it, which then takes you into, well, was it a bad execution of how we tried to solve it? And what could we have done better? Did we introduce something that maybe we didn't realize the consequences of? And sometimes you see these with things like security messages. You think, let's add a security message, give the customer a bit of reassurance. And actually, what you've done is introduced doubt because they weren't worried about security at that point. But now you've made them think about it. And now they've gone off and started looking for all these other trust factors that maybe they're having trouble finding. So we learn from that and we iterate on that. So if we're going to introduce a trust message, then we need to back that up as well with some extra information about what that means. That's a common strategy that we run with a lot of customers and seen success with. We call it triggers. So we're dealing with all those messages in one clear execution, kind of helping get one step ahead of that. And that's typically how we would kind of deal with it. The other thing I would say as well is that we've started to take a different approach to what's classed as a winner. And there's obviously an important case for looking at statistical significance when we're determining has an experiment had a positive effect and an uplift for customers. But what we started to find was, when we were looking for high levels of significance because we're trying to eliminate false positives. And what that can mean is sometimes you're not making changes because it hasn't delivered enough significance on enough of a significant result. So we hold back on making those changes on the site. And what that can mean is then the volume of changes that take place on the site starts to slow down. And a customer site can actually start to stagnate a little bit. It stops looking fresh and stops changing often. And so we started to then shift our focus a little bit. We're building these experiments because we identified a problem that the customers were facing.
Mm-hmm.
We created a design that we believe is better than the original. And we built it as an experiment. We've QA'd it. We know that it's working well. But the result just isn't a statistically significant win. The stats haven't reached 95% significance.
Yeah.
Might still be positive, might be a little bit flat, but we believe we've made everything better along the way. So actually, in those scenarios, what we've started to do is kind of look at it a bit more pragmatically and say, we've not reached a significant result, but we think everything looks better, behaves better. So actually, let's roll with it anyway. Let's put it into VS Code because it's not having a negative effect. And that's probably where we start to focus a bit more, especially with really mature clients who understand the value of what they're doing. And actually starting to exclude changes that can have a negative effect. That allows for a lot more to happen a lot quicker, keeps the site refreshed, and constantly being updated, constantly solving those customers' problems as well, rather than sort of leaving them in existence until we find something that creates a statistically significant win.
Got it. And the two other themes in CRO that are we are hearing a lot. One is GDPR. I'll come to the AI part later, but from a pure GDPR perspective, what do you think is the impact of GDPR on user research and the type of tests that are conducted for your clients?
So I mean, it's the biggest impacts are obviously around customers having to agree to share their data and allow it to be tracked.
Mm-hmm.
And so that can mean that when we're reviewing things like Google Analytics, we may not be getting the whole picture because there's a chunk of users who aren't sharing their data. And even those who are outside of GDPR, changes within how Safari is kind of dealing with cookie data as well. It means that sometimes what we see within the analytics platform isn't necessarily the whole truth. Users who are identified as new aren't necessarily new, and so we need to treat the data that we're looking at with a little bit more caution, and not sort of, we can't trust everything 100% as being the total truth. So that's been one of the impacts of it. For us, that's not too much of an issue because we combine everything with qualitative data as well, like I said, the surveys and the user testing. So we know that we're always triangulating all of those insights, and we deal with GDPR when we're getting those additional qualitative points, so it doesn't stop us from gathering that data. But we have to be mindful how we put it together.
Sure.
When we're running the experiments, obviously it has a second effect, and that could be a few different things really. So how consent mode affects the triggering of experiments, whether they're being shown before the user accepts and gives consent to their data being shared, if we're waiting until they accept before we trigger the experiment, and then how we make sure it triggers at the right time afterwards. And we've seen clients have issues where that doesn't happen automatically, so we need to make sure the right fixes are in place to make sure that once they accept, the experiment triggers, the data is recorded, and then we can kind of move forward from there. So those all kind of have impacted as well. But on the whole, where clients are implementing GDPR in the right way and triggering consent mode in the right way, we're still seeing 80% of that data, 80% of users opting in and allowing the cookies to be shared in a lot of cases. So from that point of view, we've still got a pretty solid picture of what's happening, and it still represents a pretty reliable data set for us to be analyzing as well.
Got it. And what about the AI part of it? In what ways has Gen AI streamlined the CRO process? From what have you seen? Are you integrating it as a part of your work right now? What do you think about AI as a part of CRO?
So it's a huge area, and I think we've been building it into what we do probably for around 3 years now. We've been looking at how we can make more use of it and gradually adding it. I think it was around 2021 when we built an in-house data science team to kind of look at how we can use the data we have, and through AI start to improve how we use it. So there's a few areas we're benefiting. One, straight away, is within our research side of things, how we analyze data, in particular qualitative data, things like customer surveys. So we always run surveys. We also use open-ended questions. So that means if we have 1,000 responses to a survey and there's 10 questions within that, that's 10,000 unique responses that we're having to read through. And in the past, that would have been potentially a few days, a few weeks worth of work. Mm-hmm. Now with AI and kind of the analysis we can do, that can be a few hours instead. And from there, we can start to extract what are the key themes and topics that customers are talking about. It also has the added benefit that it removes a bit of human bias as well. So when you have people going through the results and they start to form themes in their own mind, and then the following analysis, the time that they spend in the hours after, almost kind of comes a bit of confirmation bias of those things, and you can lose sight of new ideas that come out of it. And actually the AI helps remove some of that as well, which is really good. We've started using it with our development team to help with coding. So actually kind of speeding up the process of, we use tools that predicts the next line of code for the developer. which is helping speed that up. It means that they're able to build more tests in a shorter space of time. It also helps reduce some of the mistakes that might creep in the code when it's being manually entered, and that can then speed up the QA process as well. So on that side, it's helping us too. And then the third one is we also built a tool called the Predictor, and interestingly, very similar to something the VWO has as well.
Yeah.
So a VWO analyzes the site and kind of based on the products and the vertical that the site is based in, will suggest successful experiments that have been run in the past. And ours is quite similar, where we've taken the data of kind of the thousands of experiments that we've run in the past. We have a few extra data points that we've added in from kind of, I guess, from a manual point of view in terms of what we've done. We enter in the psychological principles behind all of the experiments, the pages specifically they've run on, and the elements of the page that they've run on. And we've used all of that data from the last 8 years to feed the predictor. And so when we want to run a new experiment, we put in we answer a series of questions around where the test is going to be run, how long it's going to be run for, what's the psychological principle behind the issue and the solution. And that actually predicts what the likely outcome is going to be. It tells us whether it's likely to win or lose or have no difference at all. And we then use that to either guide us to make sure we're testing the right things, which are actually going to have an impact, or actually adjust slightly what we're doing. For example, if we input an idea, I always use the example of search with this. Most retailers, you'll see that users who search convert at a much higher rate, and so a lot of people rush to the idea that if you make search more visible, increase the size of your search bar, you'll drive more users into search and they'll convert better. Once we started to analyze all this data, what we actually realized is that that's not true. Users who want to search will find the search bar and will search, and they'll have success. But if you actually really want to benefit from that, change your approach from the psychological approach of attention, change it away from attention and change it to motivation. So can you motivate users who hadn't thought about search to search instead? Give them ideas, inspire them, make them think about things that they haven't thought about searching for. And that's actually where we see the majority of success. So that's kind of how the tools also helped shape the solutions that we suggest. And we've seen a really big benefit also of our customers. So our average win rate before that was around 28%, and since we started using the predictor tool to fuel those changes, it's now gone up to over 40%.
Wow.
And we track that every month to kind of make sure that it stays that way as well.
Wonderful. Yeah, I have an experience as well. One of our clients, the major furniture retailer, they started having a recommendations engine where the same thing, they would motivate people. If someone is buying a couch, like a sofa, would motivate that, hey, you can actually design an entire living room with us.
Yeah.
So that's the motivation part of the picture. I totally understand that. Garret, you have your backgrounds in digital marketing, right? That's why you started and moved to CRO. In your opinion, what do you think right now in the UK, for example, how integrated are CRO efforts along with marketing efforts or maybe digital marketing efforts? Is it truly integrated, or do you think there is space of improvement, of integration? What do you think? What's your opinion about it?
I think we're quite a bit away from being truly integrated. I think they're both kind of seen very separately. Some businesses are bringing them together, and that's a good thing because the reality is we have to look at how we're driving users to site and what that tells us about their behavior to begin with, and using CRO and optimization to get the most out of that's really important. But I don't think it happens often enough. I think we've kind of looked at it as a little bit of a USP for ourselves that all of our senior leadership team have that similar background. We've all worked together for a long time, and all of us had a previous background in acquisition. So from the day we started, we've recognized that there is a very common battleground across all e-commerce businesses, and that tends to be Google Shopping. It's where Google's kind of pushing the greatest level of emphasis, and most businesses we speak to, a lot of the time it's kind of 70% plus of their traffic comes from Google Shopping. That traffic lands on a PDP, looks at the products, the users are looking for key information, then they leave and go somewhere else and do the same thing on another website. And they might look at 3 or 4 different sites, gather the information they need, and then decide where they're going to purchase from. And if you're not tying in optimization, you're just welcoming that. You're just allowing that to happen. And so what you see is high bounce rates and a pretty mediocre ROI. So what we actually started to really focus on and emphasize with our customers was, this is absolutely an area that we focus our attention. So when we're doing our user behavior analysis and we're running moderated user testing sessions, we start the customers on Google and we say, if you're looking for a new sofa, how would you go about finding it? So we see what they search for. Once they search, we then see where their attention goes, what parts of the results did they look at, and they click on something, and we can ask, why did they click on that? What was the reason for you clicking on that specific ad? And they can tell us what stood out and what drew their attention. When they land on the site, we then give them some time and then find out, what were you looking for? What were the key things that you wanted to know on there? And why are you not proceeding with the purchase now? And so we start to understand what they liked and didn't like. And then we can build up a picture over time of over a series of these instances as to, for each of the different sectors, what are the key bits of information that they want to see. For our clients, we then make sure that, one, we're communicating that clearly. We're sharing about the key values that the customers want. And we're making sure that they can see it, find it within that time frame, they're not missing it. But then also, if we can't tick all of those boxes, we're looking at how do we keep them on site as well? How do we reduce that bounce rate? Because again, if we reduce the bounce rate, it gives us more opportunity to generate sales, deliver a better ROI for the customer as well. So, there is definitely benefit to stronger integration between the services. I think it starts with a better understanding between each other as to what they can offer, how they can help each other, and then from there, it's about diving into where the important areas of focus are. And I would definitely say as a starting point, PDP or details page, Google Shopping traffic, those are kind of key areas. And then after that, Meta traffic arriving on the site, what's happening with that, and seeing what you can do there. So yeah, they should come closer together in my opinion. But there's still room for improvement.
Got it. And then finally, is there a test that you recently ran, like a testing campaign that you would like to talk about? Something that you're going to remember? Any insights you got? Anything memorable?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one, but for me anyway, we ran a recent test with a customer. I won't say what the customer is or what vertical they're in, but the test was fairly subtle. A few color changes in terms of colors of badges and some wording, and the test didn't really do anything. It didn't move the needle in terms of driving any improvements. And the customer was kind of surprised. They thought it was should definitely tick all the boxes. Whereas from our point of view, it wasn't based on research. It wasn't based on customers telling us that they had any issue seeing the badges or seeing the pricing or any of the information that was around. So, if we're not seeing in any of our customer insight that this is a problem, we typically wouldn't overly focus on it. It would be a low priority. And that for me was important because it really reinforced the value of data-led testing, not just kind of best practices, as we said, actually understanding the challenges your customers have, focusing on those as kind of the areas that you try to test on, and then actually you try to improve, because solving a problem that real customers are facing is definitely the way you're going to generate the biggest insight. So that was probably a field experiment that for me really reinforced that customer data is so key to driving your strategy, rather than kind of marketing principles or things like that. Definitely not best practices.
Data-driven experimentation is key. Keep on hearing.
Yeah, that's it.
Sounds
Yeah.
good. Sounds good. Garret,
let's jump into the rapid fire for you, Garret. So I have 8 questions. They will come one by one. And the answers have to be rapid, right? You cannot think much. If you were starting your career in CRO today, what is one thing that you would do differently?
Spend more time learning about statistics.
Got it. And is there a book you think every CRO professional should follow? A podcast, a practitioner? What do you think? Should someone have a role model?
I would say, I would recommend anybody and everybody reads Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow by Garret Cunningham. That's probably kind of the one that got me thinking most about how people's brains work, how they make decisions. And so I read that before getting into CRO, and I'm glad I did.
Wonderful. That's my favorite. I finished it and I started Sapiens, and I recently finished Sapiens as well. It's incredible how the human brain evolved over time. Do you have a go-to destination?
For
Travel, just travel, personal travel.
Cyprus is probably a place that we go to the most as a family. We're all pretty comfortable there. Good sunshine, nice people. It's good.
Nice. What is one thing you think AI is going to replace in 3 years from now, 2027, let's just say?
So I think AI will replace the basic analysis of most things. It's going to help us kind of speed up extracting insights, and what I think, I don't say that as a kind of threat to people who are data analysts, but I think where our role becomes more important is how we interpret that analysis and apply context, because that seems to be the biggest area that I think AI is letting us down at the minute, is a lack of context for what things mean and what customers are meaning and moment in time.
Got it. Is there a single CRO metric that you think people should stop obsessing over? Don't say conversion rate. Maybe it is conversion rate.
No, I don't. I think all the metrics can have a point in time. Whether it's revenue per user or average order value, they all have a relevance at some moment in time. There's nothing I've heard and kind of thought, stop. But actually, the one thing I would say is, focusing on overall site conversion rate. Trying to measure that from 1 year to the next is almost impossible, because, as soon as you start improving your conversion rate, you get better return on investment. So then you start to use that budget somewhere else and you bring it back down again. So, trying to measure that over a long term and say you're increasing is so difficult.
Got it. Just one final question. Do you have a personal goal, personal or professional, in the next 3 years you want to achieve?
To be honest, at the minute, I joined Columbus this year and trying to work on that integration. For me, it's really seeing the global optimization side of Columbus actually become properly global, and hopefully have teams established in all the key countries that Columbus operate in, rather than sort of at the minute they're all focused out of the UK. I'd like to see a team in each country.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Garret, for your insights. I think they were very, very valuable. Our listeners will get a lot of insights and information and context behind everything that you have shared. Thank you so much, Garret, and we'll be in touch again. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Patricia. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Cheers.